submit spirit to form matter. Our celestial humanity arrives, awake in a dream, an inception of our reality. So we live, we love, and then there is music. So we dance, we sing, we praise, we reflect. In the infinite in between, the now that was, faces dance in our dreams. Some familiar, some
a single vision radio.
Cosmic composition. In the irrelevance of this time, we realize the passion of the random abstraction, learning the lesson that the brotherhood of man is far more important than the ego of any individual. Imagination becomes the sound of thought, traveling at the speed of art. So we paint on the canvas of our ephemeral encounters, a masterpiece that lives in the eternity of a child's mind. Legend has it that during the Maya, or Great Tragedy, there was a way out for Nubians to escape. Prepared by a great king who wanted to liberate his tribe from the perils of the future. As long as they stayed linked together, they were sure to be liberated from the horrors that awaited the future generation. When the slave ships would pass through the Bermuda Triangle, this was their chance to get free. They all would stay linked together and jump overboard in the perfect storm, linked together in unbroken chains. When they got underwater, the whales would sing to them and guide them through the portal under the sea to new worlds. Once through the portal, they would be transported up through a celestial causeway, where they would meet El Dovre, a celestial garden of space and time. Still linked together, once on the shores of the celestial worlds, they would begin to hear cosmic music and begin the celestial tribal march and dance, and the chains would begin to break, and each one would find instruments, conga drums, African drums, and all kinds of celestial instruments, and some would even play crystals to join in on the cosmic symphony. They all would begin to learn a new language, a cosmic language of music, nature, and rhythm. They would take on new names, which would repurpose words into more of a celestial construct. El Dovre is beloved, El Therapy, Sivab Salim, El Thoni is Nom, Al Evol Sumim, Extra Drogodon, Morel Gourdon, etc., etc. This was the new paradox, but there was a dilemma. They soon learned that where they went was the Maya Fanun, or the redemption beyond the great treasure. But their ancestors went through the Maya, and now they had to come down from the heavens and enter Amin Rika, the birthright inheritance beyond the Maya, to teach the captives cosmic music, to help them break their chains and become stewards of the cosmos. The elemental progression of our souls supersedes the physical evolution of our spirit. As we evolve into higher beings, we resolve and dissolve lower dimensions. The breath is the divine animate to our physical form. As we evolve higher and higher into the ether fabric of the cosmos, the functions of the physical dynamo is rendered very unnecessary as we function more and more on thought wheel manifestation, enabling us to materialize and dematerialize anything, even ourselves. This reality is elusive to most, but as the planet ascends into higher frequencies, vibrations of dimension, this too will become the norm. Some have merely gone on to this reality long before us. So if we would attune ourselves up to these frequencies in the stillness of our minds, we too would see that they are still here and everywhere. Namaste. Eclat. The mortal mind is obsessed with illusion and materialism. This hungry ghost devours their minds, consuming them with ego to the point that they are oblivious to who they really are and what their real purpose is on this planet. Hence we are human with the buffoonian shadow called personality that binds and blinds the vision of divinity that is the one mind. They soon learn that they all are El Dovre, the beloved, Madam Moose, journey true. Good morning. We're here at the Embad African Bee Museum with Olayami Dabls, one of the illustrious superheroes of the city of Detroit, and an elder, a noble elder, and we're going to be interviewing him and asking him a few questions about the museum and just getting some elder wisdom from him today. And so, with the first question I'm going to ask, I'm not going to ask him in order. I'm going to start off randomly. Since we are here, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, probably together, because they probably go together. Tell us of beads and being, and how has your spirituality guided you through the years?
Well, and thanks for inviting me. Beads, spirituality, I'm not much aware of, because that's something that came into existence recent in my life. I've been on this planet a long time, so phrases and concepts come and go. So the spirituality one, that one popped up maybe 20 years ago. But I have some information on the use of beads traditionally. And the beads were so powerful until you didn't need any kind of support like a spirituality. The African people had worked the beads out, that any problems could be resolved by consulting with the people who disseminated the beads. And the African system worked with your brain. So if there was an issue that you have, if I was the person that was giving you the beads, you came to me, I would give you a bead and say, just think about this bead, this will resolve whatever issue you have. And because your brain is working there, it would resolve itself. You have to ask why. If something was used for 30,000 years, why is it that they're not used on the continent today? It's because they were a force to be dealt with, so they got rid of the use of beads. And beads can only be found in the marketplace now. They are not used traditionally. If you have something that was used from your pregnancy to your birth throughout your existence, then if I figure out a way to interrupt that system, I pretty much got you. So beads are very powerful, and they had to get rid of the use of beads traditionally. So that's my answer to your question about spiritualities and beads.
Okay. Next question. How should the African diaspora effectively navigate through these systemic oppressive societies?
The best way we can work our way out of or figure out what is going on is to study one's culture. And that means what we were doing prior to the arrival of foreigners, mainly Europeans, and in the beginning there were Arabs. That information is still available, because something that we very seldom think about in our system here is the use of beads. How are these beads used? And once we realize that we are not using anything that our ancestors have used for almost 30,000 years, is the system of what is called animus. The Africans had a very special relationship with animals and plants. And that can be illustrated in the mass textiles and carvings. You have to ask yourself the question, since we did not have contact with these material cultures, why is it that we have such a deep hatred of them and fear of them? How did that information infiltrate our community? Even today, people just do not want to deal with the mass, the textiles, and the carvings, because somewhere we picked up this ideal that they are evil and will hurt us, but yet we have no contact with them. So we have to be aware of there are information that's in the community, that's in the places that we live, that literally work against connecting us back to traditional values and concepts out of Africa. All these artifacts are in European museums, but they're not in our community. So why is that? Why is it that you colonized the people, enslaved them, but took their material culture back to your countries and have them on display and think the world of them, but the people who actually made and used those items, you think very little of. So it's problematic when we get to trying to connect back with who we are. Remember, connecting back with who you are is not about words. It's about things that we manifest. Your music, it's manifested. You hear it. The artifacts, you see them. But I could sit here and talk to you for 500 years and it's just words.
Yeah.
But the things that really count, that's coming out of Africa, that will connect us back to each other, we're afraid of it. And there has to be some reasons for that. And those reasons for it that we have been taught to disconnect from who we are, because once you learn who you are, then no man can keep you down. Knowledge just empowers you. Knowledge of self just remove all kinds of mental shackles that we might have, and that would connect us. We have never been one, because Africa had over 3,000 different languages and hundreds of dialects, different culture groups. So this ideal of one just will not fit into our annals of our story. But we can connect back with the material culture. It is of one. If you notice, Africa is very diverse, but the one common denominator there was the material culture. And the one thing that the European went after was the material culture. People will always be threatened by your culture. And culture, it's not in the field of history. You find the definition of culture in the field of anthropology, which says that a culture has two ingredients: language and creation myth about how you got here. If we think we can free ourselves with European degrees, European knowledge, we're fooling ourselves. The freedom of who you are is tied up in your culture, language, and how you think you got here. Now the Africans think he is here because of trees. He says that his early ancestors were trees. Now, the oldest life form on the planet is algae. Algae is closer to trees than it is to our flesh. So we got a long ways to go we're being deflected into thinking that our connection back to who we are is based on knowledge. And that is not the case. It's based on culture, values, and understand what one's culture is. And we do not know that. We'll sit around and talk to you for days, then you ask them, where you get those notions from? If you can't explain, then it's Western ideas. So I'm communicating with you in English. If we had 3,000 languages, why you and I are using English trying to express or connect back with who we are?
Because we've been stripped down so far that.
And bees are universal. You see, bees been around 30,000 years. Bees connect with all people on this planet, and there's no language involved. The information is transferred through the energy that the bees project out. So we're getting there, but it's slow, because you have a tendency to want to be that which came through mother tongue. And our mothers, the first thing they said to us was in English. Our first values and ideas and concepts came through English. So it's very difficult for us to go against mother tongue to connect back with who we are. And it's universal all over the planet. Wherever you find any large body of African people, you will find the dominated language is a European language. you have to say, why is that? Is it just because they are speaking their language and don't want to learn our language? That is not the case. They know our languages, but language is a mental hold on you. Your ideals, who you value, how you express yourself is in language. Let's take English for example. I'm sure you've seen posts on Facebook where people actually attack the African if he used bad grammar English. It's not his language, so why are we attacking it?
Right.
So it's just, we got a lot of stuff to work out, and we can only do what we do, gather this information and leave it available for people to gather and talk about it later on. It took us almost 600 years to get here. And it's probably going to take about 1,200 for us to begin to realize, where are my languages? Why am I using a foreigner's language to express who I am? Why am I connected with his view of the planet as opposed to mine? See, language gives you your view of the planet. You express yourself through whatever language you're speaking. So it would be wise for African people to insist that their children speak an African language. It really don't matter which one it is. And it would be even wiser if we began to ask for our material culture back. And so, no, we can take care of it. We had it when you came in and took it. We're doing quite well with it, so just give it back. Don't worry about how long we're going to preserve it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's wow. Wow. Having said all that, and dealing with the peoples of the planet and their injustices to us and their benefits to us and our benefits to each other, with relationships, how do we build them amongst peoples?
Well, the first idea, see, we're dealing with someone else's language. And the word relationship, there may not even be an equivalent in an African language that means relationship. All the ideas we have in our head is a result of living in a Western paradigm. Remember, the European, he was loving his family, he was providing for his family, and he was protecting his family, but yet he had us as enslaved people. We had been in that system for about 200 years, so we saw it, and we thought that that was what freedom means, to love your family. We didn't figure out the fact that he was loving his family. At the same time, he was treating us like we were not even human. So that's the problem with that concept called love that we have engaged in. And along came Motown in the 50s and created a system that placed more emphasis on this ideal of love to people. Ain't too proud to beg, sweet mama, please don't leave me now. All of those ideas created by man, that didn't come from our culture connection. That was just us mimicking and assimilating. And we are mimicking and assimilating the history, the idea, the concept of the European at this very moment. If you can't point to an African system you got it from, just so, well, I'm assimilating and mimicking. And we've done it for 4 or 5 generations until now it just seems natural to yearn and want the things the European want. We are sitting here now and watching how this European can act over land. Who? He's an original European. What you have here is a diluted European in this Western world here. And he's just killing up people for what? For their land. That is their tendency. This ideal of having mercy, being thinking of your fellow man, peace, justice, and the right to do A, B, C, and D, those are just ideas here in the West. You know, remember, these are the same people. You and I are enjoying his spoils as he enslaved, colonized everyone on this part of the hemisphere, and you and I are walking around here talking about we're free at the expense of the people who had this land. So we need to study our own history, then we can get some things in order. And you don't need to academia to explain that stuff to you. Common sense is the greatest thing on the planet. And common sense only means if there's 100 people in the room most of those people are sharing the same ideas and views, common sense. And that is something we do not have much of, is common sense to work out our own problems, not relying on some politics to save us. They are there to represent the government, which is the collective of us, but the power still relies in the individuals. They are black people raise their children, become whatever there is, independent of this so-called uniform education we receive. You're supposed to get enough from your mother and child to make you want to continue your education, to be the best you can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I know I'm long-winded.
No. This is great. What I was going to ask you is, can you speak to us of drums and read to us a story of particular reference?
About the drum?
Yeah.
Well, the drum is a natural beat. It's the rhythm of the heart. And as African people, we realize that we can make certain sounds to entertain us or to continue information that would guarantee the continuation of that particular culture group. So the ideal of hitting and patting on something is all instruments have that in them, even the ones that your instrument, for instance, you're taking your fingers as opposed to your hand.
Right. It's still a drum. Everything
it's still a
is
drum.
a drum.
Yeah, and those are very important to us, and we've used them so long until it's part of our ancestor memory, the rhythm of the drum. And at one time, the drum was very important to the African people. It called people together. It reminded people of certain things were going to take place to the day, and it was involved in all celebrations or initiations. So the first thing had to happen is you must remember the Europeans stopped us from using drums in this country, but how can you stop someone from doing something that is natural to them?
Right.
So if you can't stop it, you're allowed to be incorporated into your system and controlled and manipulated by saying other things. Yeah, the drums the drum will act as a trigger. See, we have been told that Africa was a oral place. If you have your brain, you don't need books. All you need is triggers to access information that's in you. We've seen little big head kids run around here and know everything on the planet. And where are you getting all this stuff from? Well, their brain, the filter is not there. It's coming through. We all have that capacity. But we also are fed information 24/7 telling us that we got to learn, and we can't learn, and we're dumb. You become what you're told you are, in spite of the fact you have information in you that contradicts all of that. So what has to happen is that in order for us to just connect back with Africa instantly, is to get those material cultures. That's where they come in. Material culture will act as triggers to ancestors' information that was passed on at the moment of conception to the next generation. So you and I, we are a continuum. We're here now with all the information that we had at the time of our conception. Then we pass it on to our children, and it will continue. You can't stop that. If I say the term DNA, it gives you a better idea of what I'm talking about. DNA is a code for what you are from the past. These material culture, that was the brilliance of the African people, is to make these artifacts and put triggers in them that would activate information in you. See, triggers are very powerful. You can walk down the street, hear a sound, see something, or smell something, and it would take you back to the moment you first experienced that. Now, what if we can get past the idea that we are more than just what we've experienced here on the planet, and you see these African masks, then information is going to come forward. The problem is that you won't know that it activated a trigger. It mainly shows up in people who make stuff, who do stuff, because, which is very important, because the most important people to any particular culture group is the people who make stuff. But if you can get them running down the avenue looking for fame and to replace some great artist and make money, you pretty much stagnated your whole community. The importance of the so-called artists that we call them is to give you information to do things as an individual. But we've been into this idea of artists, which is a new term. If you look it up, you will find it's a Western word with a Western definition. Fine art, same thing. But yet, everything that comes out of Africa has been titled African art. That's the deflection. Because what do you do with art? You put it on your couch, top of your couch, you look at it. It's not supposed to educate you. So we have been deceived by them defining everything we have as art. If someone is wearing his beads, textiles, and carving, you look at it and say, oh man, he's regal, he's adorned. No, he's communicating specific information about his culture group. But we missed that. So there's a lot of things that we can do to reconnect. Go to the places that are housing our material culture. The first thing you do, don't read the captions. Don't pay any attention to the narrative, because that's another language trying to explain what we have done. The pieces themselves will communicate with you. So there are ways we can connect back to who we were without even knowing it. Most of the Europeans operate on the same accord, and they speak different languages because they're reflecting from the same pool of information. We're the only one that's misfit or out of place when we try to mimic or assimilate Europeans. We're the only, if a person came away from another planet here and saw what was going on, they couldn't make the assumption that there was Africans in Detroit, because we have done very little to upset the infrastructure of a Western culture. The buildings, the houses, all this stuff goes back to Europe. This is one of the few places that you come to that pushes that button. You realize there's something different going on here. This is not a typical culture center, European. It falls into a different category. And that was the goal in which I was working on for the last 20 years. If there's any validity to any of the things that I'm saying, if I can't materialize it, it's just words. So I materialized it, and it looks different. And for those who may not know, they might even say it's art, but there's nothing that's art here. This is an educational experience. People will say, what was your inspiration? I will say information. It's wow, information. And then I proceed to talk about what's here. There's nothing here that's appealing to just my aesthetics. This aesthetics, what is that? That's something you learn. And the ideal of aesthetics is mainly coming of our Western connection with the Western world. And no one has smothered me out. In fact, I've gotten a greater highlight because I'm emphasizing my ancestors. They're not sin destroyed. Notice it, come on, bring it on. It's enjoyable. You know, we have been misled and miseducated and think a European education frees us. No, European education put an invisible perimeter around you that you can't connect back with Africa. You know, and those are just facts, and anyone try to argue different, I'm gonna listen. If what you're saying is valid, I'm gonna stop doing what I'm doing and start doing what you're doing. You know, our goal is to do the best thing that will guarantee the continuation of our kind. That has not worked. Our situation here in America is worse than it was pre-60s. we run around here thinking we have arrived. How can you arrive anywhere without any connection to anything remotely related to your culture? As musicians, you're constantly tapping into your African consciousness. You come up with an arrangement of sounds and some. Where'd you get that from? I don't know, man. It just come from me doing it. Well, I got news for you. Nothing just come from you doing it. Everything is pretty much working off the information that you have received from the past.
You've answered just about every question I had on here. That's just beautiful. That's beautiful because they all interconnected, and that's how, just what you were talking about, that's how it is. Everything connects. And so what I'm going to ask you now is, do you have any questions? And when I ask that, I want if you could pose it in a way where you're instructing, like asking questions like, do you know such and such and so and so and such and so and so, like that. And as many as you can. It's your time. You know, you're always an educator because you're an elder, but this is to educate those who do not know. Ask them some questions so that they can go and search it out.
Yeah. Do I have any questions for you or the viewing audience? No, I learned a long time ago that if you have information for the people, you must realize using someone else's language to communicate that information is probably more dangerous than just allowing it to come through your actions. So I've spent my years doing what I think is the correct way to move. We are in a system that your views and ideas are so charged until people will turn against you just because you said something that goes against their views or ideas. So I had to figure out another way of communicating with people without offending them, without turning them off if that was not the goal. So I had just continually to do what I am doing, and others will just see that. See, we have to move away from relying on what the Europeans told us about how this planet and people work. We communicate outside of the voice. By the way, we've only had a larynx for 50,000 years, so obviously the voice was not important. Body movement, and if you got a thought, people can pick up the energy from that thought. So therefore, I stayed away from debating or arguing with people about you're wrong, I'm right. I just stayed over here for the last 23 years, just doing what I do, and see if it has any validity, it will still be here. If it's false, it will fall by the wayside. And the second thing is that I don't need to protect it. I don't need to enclose it. I don't need to put securities on it. All I need to do is have it where the people can see it, and they will reach their own conclusions about my ideals and my views. And that has happened. At this point in time, I talk more. See, you remember when Ife and I were doing stand-up
Yes, sir.
poetry, but what we were doing, he was
griot
playing the
gathering.
drums, and I
Griot
would be talking
gathering.
about history.
The griot gathering.
Yeah, and people, they didn't know how to accept that,
I missed that.
but it worked.
Yes, sir.
So we have to figure out what is best for the continuation of our kind, as opposed to what is best for feed my family. The universe is alive and it's active with us. If we're doing things that is working in harmony with it, it will provide for us. And it has provided for this space here because I'm helping more people than I am harming. See, I studied art at Wayne State, but before I went to Wayne State, I was at Highland Park Community College. So when I went to Wayne State, the indoctrination was quite obvious. So I went to Wayne State. Now they're telling me about these great European artists. And I realized this is an indoctrination process going on. There's nothing wrong with it, but it just wouldn't filter through because I haven't told who I am proud to go on. So I had to figure out a way, how is it that there's something separate than art? See, most people think everything is art because that's the way it's been marketed. You gotta have art, community art program, the fine art, and all that stuff is just deception. When we began to study our history, then it becomes quite obvious that Africa had no art. Everything was for the guarantee of the continuation of your people. And that alone removes it from that category of art. So I never tried to challenge people on their ideas and views. And they come in here. That's why this place is accepted by everybody. Because all the divergent views in the community are embraced here. I'm not concerned about where you at this point in time. Because he who has the information has the advantage. See, I just threw something on just a few minutes ago when I said that the Larynx has only been around for about 50,000 years. So if the Larynx has only been around for about 50,000 years, how can you tell me you millions of years old? And I think we undermine the ideal of Lucy, and Lucy was a little 3 feet tall fossil. What made her a human was her shoulder bones. No other animals had that. Then another one came along called Ade, about 200,000 years ago. She had this bone that's in the back of our heel that make us upright, walk upright. And we were referred to as bipedal, who walk on two. So when you have a history of what actually happened on the planet, you can afford to allow people to push misinformation, mythology, and bad concept out. Because knowledge empowers you. It doesn't make you want to fight someone. It doesn't make you want to be angry. You have to find out a way to put it in the physical. Your music is in the physical because people can hear it. It's separate from you. What I'm doing is in the physical. It's outside. It's in here. And people want that. When we continually to miseducate our people with European words, it's problematic. And that's all we're doing. If the languages are not a science, it's a translation. That's a big hint there. So if you're trying to educate African people to connect back with Africa and you only using English, it's problematic. Or you only using Spanish, French, any European language, if you're only using those languages, it's problematic.
Because it only goes to a certain point and stops.
Yeah. Yeah, the material to culture of the bees, it communicates with all on the planet. And the Europeans don't hate us. They're trying to preserve whatever culture they have. And we're like hungry tigers and lions. We pounce on their culture and take it. I'd be angry too. Yeah. So no, I don't ask questions, and I'm very seldomly communicating with most people. See, I know I can talk to you because it's an interview, and you're going to share this with people that are familiar with you. But there are people who come in here, sometimes I shut down because I can just tell that they're not ready for what I'm about to say. And my goal is to do a commerce with you. I'm not here to convince you to do anything.
Right.
But then there are some people come through here, they ask the right question, boom, I can talk to them for hours.
Yes, sir.
So you have to be selective about how you pass on information.
Yes, sir.
especially since it's not coming from a common culture that we're engaged in
Yes, sir.
in our community.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful. I wish I could express it in a more complete tongue as you just divulged.
You did.
But it's been an honor to do this interview, and I hope that I know, I don't hope, I know it's going to inspire and disseminate the information as necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you for introducing me to your audience.